You don't get paid for being smart. You don't get paid for having certificates. You don't get paid for knowing a lot. You get paid for solving one painful, expensive problem. And if you're stuck trying to make money online, it's probably not because you're lazy. It's not because you're dumb. It's not because you missed the opportunity. It's because you think you need to feel ready before you start. But nobody pays for ready. They pay for results. Most beginners think money follows knowledge. So they binge marketing videos, learn copywriting, funnels, ads, branding, AI tools, etc. But money doesn't follow knowledge. It follows outcomes. And until you understand that shift, you'll stay stuck preparing instead of getting paid. Businesses only care about outcomes. If you owned a roofing company and someone came to you and said they've studied marketing for 3 years, you wouldn't care. You wouldn't ask how many courses they've taken or how many books they've read. You'd ask one question: can you help me get more booked inspections? That's it. Because if 15 inspections turns into 3 jobs and each job is worth $3,000, that's $9,000 in revenue. So paying someone $1,000 to make that happen is logical. It's not emotional, it's math. Businesses don't pay for intelligence, they pay for pain removal. They pay for more customers, more booked appointments, more predictable revenue. And when you understand that, you stop obsessing over becoming impressive and start focusing on becoming useful. That's the real shift. Why vagueness creates insecurity. Right now, you probably describe what you do in broad terms. You say you do marketing or lead generation, or you help businesses grow. And that sounds fine, but it's vague. And vagueness creates insecurity. When you're broad, you feel unqualified because you're comparing yourself to experts in an entire field. But when you narrow down to one specific problem for one specific type of business, the pressure drops dramatically. Instead of trying to be a marketing expert, you become someone who helps roofing companies book inspections. Instead of learning everything about ads, you learn how to generate booked appointments. Instead of studying branding for months, you focus on moving one number. That one number might be booked inspections. It might be new patient appointments for dentists. It might be trial signups for a gym. The actual niche matters less than the structure. Pick a type of business, pick a measurable outcome, and build around that. Specificity does two things. First, it makes your offer easier to understand and sell. Second, it shrinks the skill gap in your head. When you try to compete as a general marketing expert, you're competing with agencies' 10-year veterans' massive portfolios. When you focus on one narrow outcome for one niche, you're not competing with the entire internet. You're solving a local, practical problem. And that's manageable. Learning backwards from revenue. This is where the concept of learning backwards from revenue becomes powerful. Most people learn randomly. They consume whatever looks interesting. They dive into copywriting one week, AI tools the next, then branding, then some new automation software. It feels productive, but it's not connected to money. A better way is to start with the outcome you want to sell and then only learn what directly helps produce the outcome. If your outcome is helping roofers book 15 inspections per month, then you need to learn how to find roofers who need help, how to communicate a clear offer, how to generate leads through outreach or ads, how to track booked appointments, and how to follow up. And that's it. You don't need to master every marketing concept. You need to understand one process well enough to move one metric. When you reduce it to that level, it becomes learnable. It stops being overwhelming and starts being mechanical. The credentials trap. Now let's address the insecurity about credentials because this is where people freeze. You think you need something that proves you're allowed to be there: a degree, a certification, a polished website, a big client logo, 10 testimonials. But most business owners aren't evaluating you like a professor grading a paper. They're evaluating you like someone trying to solve a problem. They are experts at roofing or dentistry or running a gym. They are not experts at marketing systems. When you position yourself clearly around one outcome, you're not trying to look superior. You're trying to be useful. If you don't have niche specific proof yet, you don't lie and you don't apologize. You position it honestly and confidently. You can say you've worked in lead generation before, but you're now focusing specifically on this industry and looking to partner long term with one company in that space. That frames it as focused expansion, not inexperience. Testimonials, pricing, and reducing risk. Now let's talk about testimonials and pricing, because this is where beginners often destroy their positioning. When you don't have testimonials, your instinct might be to lower your price. That's a mistake. You don't reduce your price, you reduce risk. In a structured model, you don't sell vague services, you sell lead batches. Most partners start with 25 to 50 leads paid up front, and then they scale from there. That communicates structure. It communicates that this is a system and not a random experiment. If someone wants to test first, that's perfectly fine, but you never discount. You adjust the volume only. You might start with 10 leads at first instead of 25. The pricing model is the exact same, you're just having a smaller commitment. That keeps authority intact. You're not negotiating value, you're offering controlled entry into a defined system. Your pricing logic stays simple. If it costs you $80 to generate a lead, you charge $160, 2 times cost per lead. You're not selling clicks, you're selling qualified opportunities and the infrastructure behind them. And if one of those leads turn into a $3,000 job, the economics make sense for the business. That's how you remove emotion from pricing. It's simple maths. Paid upfront also matters because when someone pays upfront, they behave differently. They respond faster, they treat leads seriously, they show up. Free trials attract low commitment. Paid trials attract serious buyers. The fear of failure. Now let's deal with the deeper fear, failure. When you say you're scared of failing, you're usually not scared of the mechanics failing. You're scared of what it would mean about you. That you're not capable, that you're behind, that you're not cut out for business, that everyone else gets it and you don't. Failure feels like identity exposure. It feels like proof. But here's the reality. In business, failure is an identity. It's a feedback. And that distinction changes everything. If you send 100 outreach emails and nobody replies, that's not proof you're incapable. That's messaging feedback. Something in the angle, the niche, the wording, or the targeting didn't resonate. That's mechanical, it's adjustable. If you get booked calls but don't close, that's positioning feedback. Maybe the ROI wasn't clear, maybe the niche wasn't high ticket enough, maybe your confidence dipped. All of that is trainable. If you close a client but results are slower than expected, that's process feedback. Maybe your cost per lead assumptions were off, maybe the targeting needs tightening, maybe the client isn't following up properly. That's operational, it's fixable. Notice the pattern? Every failure in this model is information. Nothing is permanent unless you interpret it as permanent. The real danger isn't rejection. The real danger is retreat. Most people don't fail because the model doesn't work. They fail because after friction, they retreat back into consumption mode. They tell themselves, I need another course, I need to learn more, I'm not ready yet. That feels productive, but it's avoidance disguised as preparation. The only real mistake here is replacing iteration with isolation, because isolation feels safe. No rejection, no exposure, no uncomfortable calls, but also no data, no skill growth, no revenue. Now, here's something grounding. You don't need everyone to say yes. You don't even need most people to say yes. You need 2 or 3 clients. That's it. Out of hundreds of potential roofing companies, solar companies, insurance brokers, remodelers, you need a tiny fraction. If you contact 200 businesses and 197 ignore you, that's not failure, that's filtering. Those 197 businesses weren't aligned, weren't ready, weren't interested, or weren't a fit at all. You're not running for president. You're not trying to win public approval. You're trying to land 2 to 3 aligned businesses. When you understand that, rejection loses its emotional weight. And here's another important shift. Rejection feels personal because you're new. But to the business owner, it's routine. They receive pitches weekly, they decline proposals weekly, they don't sit there thinking about you after they say no. You feel exposed, they feel busy. That perspective alone reduces half the anxiety. And let's go deeper. Confidence is not built before action, it's built after exposure. The first time you send an outreach email, your brain treats it like a social threat. Rejection historically meant exclusion, and exclusion meant danger. So your nervous system reacts. That discomfort doesn't mean you're incapable, it means you're stretching. By the 10th time you send out an outreach email, it feels less intense. The 15th time, it feels more normal. Why? Because your brain updates its prediction model. It learns, this didn't destroy me, this is survivable, I can handle this. That's confidence, not hype, not affirmations, exposure without retreat. And here's something most people miss. If you quit early, your brain never gets to update. You stay stuck at the this feels dangerous stage. You stay stuck at the this feels dangerous stage. But if you push through that first uncomfortable phase, something stabilizes. It becomes procedural. Now let's be even more grounded. You're not performing surgery. You're not risking someone's life. You're offering to help a business generate more customers. The worst realistic outcome? They say no, or the campaign needs adjustment. That's it. The stakes feel massive in your head, but in objective terms, they are small. And when you shrink exaggerated stakes back to realistic stakes, action becomes a whole lot easier. Finally, understand this. Failure only becomes identity when you personalize it. If you treat it as data, it becomes direction. Operators don't ask, businesses don't ask, what if I fail? They ask, what do I do to adjust if it doesn't work? Entrepreneurs shouldn't ask, what if I fail? They should ask, what do I adjust if it doesn't work? That single shift turns fear into engineering. And once you start viewing rejection as filtering and friction as feedback, something powerful happens. You stop protecting your ego and you start building your skill. And skill compounds, not because you avoided failure, but because you used it instead. Confidence is built, not felt. Confidence is another misunderstood concept. People think they need to feel confident before they act, but confidence is a byproduct of your nervous system treats outreach and sales conversations as social risk. That discomfort isn't proof you're incapable, it's proof you're doing something. Repetition reduces novelty. Reduced novelty feels like confidence. The first 10 conversations feels intense. The next 15 feel normal. Eventually it becomes routine. Action creates feedback, feedback creates adjustment, adjustment creates small wins. Small wins create evidence. Evidence shifts identity, identity stabilizes confidence. You don't wait for confidence, you build it through reps. Cold email and infrastructure done properly. Now let's talk about the practical side for a bit, especially if you're using cold email. You can't buy a domain today and blast 200 emails out tomorrow. That's how you destroy your sender reputation and end up in spam. You need to set up your domain properly, create inboxes, and warm them up for 2 to 3 weeks. That's non-negotiable if you want this to work out long term. Whilst your emails are warming up, you're not sitting idle. You pick your niche, define your outcome, structure your offer, build a simple one-page site that clearly states who you help, what result you produce, and you build your prospect list. Aim for around 1,000 contacts so you have a pipeline before you ever send your first serious batch. Once your inboxes are warm, you start sending out your emails. 20 to 30 emails per day per inbox at the beginning. Then you can work your way up all the way up to around 50 emails per day per inbox. You track replies, you book calls. On those calls, you diagnose first and position second. You explain your pay-per-lead model. Most start with 25 to 50 leads paid up front. If they want to test, you offer 10 leads. The same pricing, just a smaller entry. That's how you build this without hype. If you want structure and accountability whilst you build this out, that's why Lead Incubator exists. It focuses on narrowing the lane, structuring the offer, setting up outreach properly, and building proof fast. Because once you have proof, confidence and clarity follow naturally. It's $19 a month right now, and I'll likely raise it as it grows. If that helps you move faster, the link's down below. If not, that's totally fine. But don't stay stuck in theory. You don't need to become an expert. You need to become useful. Businesses don't pay for knowledge, they pay for pain removal. Pick a problem, solve it, adjust, build proof, and move on. And that's how you get paid. I'll see you in the next one.